counting down. Hi everyone, Jennifer Zoeller, Red Shoe Realtor with Abundance Real Estate. I'm here with Ruby Coomes with Allstate. She's an agent there. She actually is my insurance agent. She's agent for some of our clients. And so we thought we would just kind of dive in today and answer. We get a lot of questions about real estate. And I thought it'd be great to dive in with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you want to take a minute and introduce yourself a little?
Yes, so I am an Allstate Insurance agent out of Cedarburg. I work with Stephanie Borth, the agency right downtown. I've been doing this for almost 2 years now, and boy, have I seen the market change just since I started. So I think this is a very appropriate topic of conversation, just because there's so much to know, and it's changing all the time.
That's what it seems like. And just like to let you know, like, why we chose to have Ruby, she's like, she's so great to work with. Like, she's very prompt and communicative and like great with questions, easy to reach. But on top of that, she's super knowledgeable about the type of products she has. And so that's really why we reached out to her to do this interview.
And I'm so happy to be here.
Oh,
Thank
we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
And I love how she's so nicely coordinated with our new background.
It worked out very well. I didn't know that I was going to be matching.
Yeah,
I just had a hunch that this was
vibe. Yep.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dive in. So how does our local real estate or home insurance and real estate market different than what's going on nationally? And like, what's kind of unique to our area, Wisconsin, Ozaukee County?
Yeah, so in our area, I would say we are largely very lucky, right? Because we see other states that are dealing with hurricanes and all sorts of natural disasters that thankfully don't really happen in the Midwest here. So that we are lucky in that regard. We're seeing insurance companies pull out from states just based on what is happening and their inability to deal with all of those different disasters. Here, I would say, obviously, snow is huge. And more than the snow is the resultant water come the spring thaw.
Spring comes.
So that is, that's something that very heavily impacts homeowners in our area. Another thing, especially in Cedarburg, you find so many older homes. And there are just different intricacies that need to be brought into question when you're insuring a home that's older than 1950. Because you have to think about your plaster walls. You have to think about, is there cast iron plumbing? What do you want to do if something happens? Do you want it restored to its original state? Do you want to make it a little more current? Maybe you bought the old house because you love those natural, those features. So those are things that I think are a little more specific to where we are. But for the most part, again, we're pretty lucky. Pretty lucky.
Side question. So if somebody's buying an older home, can they have a choice of restoring it? Like, if something happens, let's restore to, natural or, period.
Yes.
Or modern. Do they get a choice with that? Or?
That is a perfect question. So with Allstate specifically, we have what's called functional replacement cost. So that is something when I see a home that is pre-1950, one of the questions that I would ask is, do you know, has the plaster been updated to drywall since you bought the home? Do you still have crown moldings in your home and some of those built-in features that maybe homes don't come with these days? If the answer is yes, then the next question needs to be, if something were to happen to your home, and I always knock on wood for everybody, if something were to happen and you needed to consider rebuilding your home, do you want it brought up to modern standards or not? If you want it brought up to modern standards, that's when we use functional replacement cost. It tends to bring the home premium down a little bit because they're considering that the cost to rebuild is going to be a little bit less because you're not having to bring in those unique features. You're not having to pay extra for the plaster walls. So that is always an option. If you want to keep things as they are, and understandable, I have crown molding in my home. If I lost it, I would want it back. So in that case, I would be willing to pay a little bit more on my insurance premium so that I know I can have my home restored to how it is.
You're right, because some people do buy it for those
features. Absolutely,
that time period.
Absolutely.
So it kind of leads into our next question. Like, what are some of the factors that affect the different rates and the different choices that they make? What are some of those things that we think about?
Yes, there is a lot. So the first few questions when I'm working with somebody for the first time, there's sort of a handful of questions that I always ask. First is, what year was your home built? Because that's going to tell me, it's going to help me to decipher whether or not there are other questions that I might need to ask. Second is the square footage. Square footage is kind of a weird one because whether or not we use the entire square footage is really dependent on the style of home.
Oh.
So if you have a 2-story home, we want the square footage without your basement, just the upper part of the 2-story. If you have a bi-level home where you walk in, you have a set of stairs, one goes up, one goes down, the basement, the lower level, is considered a livable part of the home.
Okay.
So those are things that we need to know. What kind of home do you have? Do you have a 1.5-story, 2-story bi-level? So those kind of all feed into the square footage question. The next would be, do you have a garage, and is it attached or detached to your home? When we're calculating for the first time what a home policy is really going to look like, the largest thing that people are paying attention to is their dwelling coverage. Mm-hmm. That is the home itself and anything that is attached to it. So if your garage is attached to your home, that falls under your dwelling coverage. If it's not attached, that's actually a separate coverage and therefore isn't being calculated. So those are some of the starter points. Other unique features is, do you have a pool? If you have a pool, you might want to consider increasing your liability.
Yeah.
We have a lot of claims related to pools, unfortunately. And then just specific features that make your home yours. Maybe the back porch that you love, that's the reason you bought it. Mm-hmm. Maybe the sunroom. For me, that's the thing for me, is where can I put my plants in the wintertime. Those specific details are really important, and if your insurance agent forgets to ask, be sure to tell them, because those will all factor into how and why we're insuring your home the way that we are.
And I think that's such a good point. Like, if they're not asking the questions, maybe you look elsewhere, because you don't want to have something come up, you need to file a claim, and you're like, well, why didn't they ask me?
Yes, yes, and we do have that happen, and that's why it's important to be thorough. And sometimes I hear, I don't want to be on the phone with an insurance agent for an hour. But if you do it once for an hour and you do it right, then hopefully, A, if something happens, you have the coverage that you need, and B, there's no further need for those long, lengthy discussions with an insurance agent. And disappointment, right. Absolutely.
So that also kind of leads into, like, what is your most valuable tips? Like, for when somebody's reaching out to get insurance, like, what would you really recommend that they know or do?
I would recommend, A, that they look at their current policy. Obviously, it's a little bit different if you're a first-time home buyer or it's a brand new home. But if you just are shopping for a lower rate, look at your current declarations page. Be sure you know what you have, because that's going to give you an idea of, actually, it's missing a whole lot of things that really mean a lot to me, or this is actually everything that I need, I just want to pay a little bit less for it, right? That's, that's an important part of insurance as well, is can you afford what you need? So one, definitely have your declarations page, have an idea of what you're actually currently insured for. And then two, just be cognizant and sort of thinking about what makes my home special to me. If something happened, what would I miss the most? That's one of the things that I really love about my job, is getting to provide education, and then also getting to connect with people about the things in their lives that mean the most to them. Yeah. And so those are things that we really want you to be thinking about beyond the price, beyond the number, is, can we mutually make sure that the things you love are protected? You know?
I can tell that when I work with you, you're like that. And I think it's so important. Like, it's just not like, check this box. That's, like you said, that's why the phone call is important. Mm-hmm. Because It's like it's something that none of us, except for if you're in the industry, are working at day to day, and so these things don't cross your mind. It might seem like a simple process because there are things we can just buy online, check a box, got it.
Right.
And really taking the time to, like you said, know what you love about your home, and working with a professional makes a big difference.
Yes, yeah, and it reminds me of our first phone call. I think we talked for over an hour, and we talked about our dogs, and we talked about, I think I sent you a link to a good hair remover, because we both have hair from our dogs all the time.
Yeah.
And it was a fun conversation that sort of, it superseded your insurance needs, but it also gave me a clearer picture of who you are and what's important to you. And those are the things that we really try and hone in on.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I appreciate it. So what are some of the misconceptions that people have about insurance that you get all the time, I'm sure?
Yes, there are a lot. So one, your home insurance policy will never, ever provide flood coverage. I think we found that out with your home policy. Flood coverage is offered through FEMA. There is not a home policy that I know of, and definitely not with Allstate, that provides flood coverage. If you're worried about your sump pump backing up and water overflowing into your basement, please talk to your agent about water backup coverage. It's so important. I cannot stress that enough. We see that all the time. Another misconception, your dwelling coverage is not the same as your market value. When we are calculating a dwelling coverage amount, we are thinking specifically and only if your home were to be a total loss, what would it take to rebuild just the home to its current standards? That's the point of insurance, is to make you whole. Unfortunately, things like, how many acres of land you own, those are not factored into dwelling coverage. What your neighbor's house just sold for, not a factor of the dwelling coverage. So that's a really big one. I have that all the time. And, to that end, dwelling coverage fluctuates, just like market value does. But it fluctuates because, again, we are focusing on, in the current market, what is it going to take to rebuild your home, not the rest of your property.
And I suppose that matters too, like current market, like, so then building supplies and things like that. And
Yes, which, right now we are in a period of time where the cost of labor and materials is higher than it has ever been. And, I've only been doing this for a couple of years, but I have spoken with agents who have made a career out of this, and they tell me that this is one of the craziest times for insurance that they have seen. And
oh, really?
Yes, we are seeing higher dwelling coverage than we have, because it's taking so much more to rebuild homes than it used to. I think those are the two big misconceptions that I get a lot. A lot. Yes.
So that kind of slides us into natural disasters in the area, but like with flood insurance, because I'm familiar. So you were able to help me with that, and this is where I think too, like working with the right professional. Like I know you just didn't take the first one that came up. You did some research. You found a really good, right? So people that are in flood zones, are they required to have flood insurance?
For the most part, yes. Okay. Yes, their mortgage companies will want to see if you're in a flood zone, and there are things like flood maps that exist. Thank goodness for Google, because I have been able to plug in addresses to a flood map to determine whether they are actually in a flood zone. But yes, most of the time a mortgage company, if you are in a flood zone, they will want to see a flood insurance policy in place, because again, your homeowner's insurance will not cover in the event of a flood.
Yeah. And so in other natural disasters, do people get additional insurance for a tornado? Or that's, I guess, in Wisconsin, like you said, snow and then melting, but what about tornadoes or that?
Yes, so yes, you would get the insurance that you have paid for. There isn't really at least not within our state, and not within Allstate. It's a tongue twister. There isn't extra just tornado coverage. What you have is two deductibles that apply to your home policy. You have a wind and hail. So most likely a tornado would fall under the wind. And then you have your all peril deductible, which is everything else.
Okay.
You can have a variance in those deductibles if you want to lower all peril and a higher wind and hail because it's less frequent. You are welcome to do that. But no, if in the event of a tornado that drops some debris on your home or takes your roof off, just your standard home insurance policy is sufficient. But again, in the event of natural disasters or even just snow thawing in the spring, your sump pump backing up, you want that water backup coverage on there.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Let's see. So if we sort of covered a bit, maybe we can just like be specific. What type of insurance coverages are typically required when you buy the home? So one of them was like if you're in a flood zone.
Yes, if you're in the flood zone, you do need that flood insurance policy. Other than that, the mortgage company really just wants to see that you have a home insurance policy in place. In my experience, they will not go through with a closing date unless you have that home insurance policy.
Because it protects their asset.
It protects
right?
their
Yeah.
asset, absolutely. Some mortgage companies may have specifics that they want I've only seen this once or twice where they want the dwelling coverage to be at least as high or higher than the loan itself. Most of the time they're not looking for that. If you're talking about a condo, that's a little bit of a different story. They'll definitely want to see the right amount of coverage there, but for just a typical home, you just need a home insurance policy in place. But I do recommend that you get a good strong one, even if your mortgage company isn't requiring it.
Right. I mean, it's one of those situations. Yeah, if the worst happens, you don't want to be looking back and going, I should have listened
to my lender. I should have listened to my real estate agent. I should have listened to my insurance agent. You know, we really are out here to just try and make sure that you have the coverage that you need when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, are there neighborhood-specific things that affect coverage or that people should be thinking about in their policy? Or is it not really, neighborhood or, like, city or things like that?
Yes and no. In Ozaukee County, I would say that's maybe a little bit less of the case. When you start getting further out into the city, your risks are different. If you're out on the back roads of Pioneer and Wasaki, you might be a little more concerned about what if a raccoon gets into my roof? Because you have more nature out there. What if the tree that's old and beautiful finally comes tumbling down on the home? Those might be factors that you would want to consider. In the city, you're thinking about the risks of other people because it's just more heavily populated. So it's just slightly different risks depending on where you are. I think the big one that we're running into right now is something called town class. So this is a rating that is given to your address, and it's really considering two different things. One is your location in reference to the nearest non-volunteer fire department. If something happens to your home, how long is it going to take to get help there?
Oh, interesting.
And then the next factor would be, what is the proximity of the nearest fire hydrant? Similar thought process. If, again, I'm knocking on wood, I can't help it, it's a compulsion, but
probably more so.
Yes. If you have a kitchen fire and it gets out of control, where's the closest water source?
Yeah.
So when you're further out from those things, you may see a little bit higher of a premium because the thought process is what would have been just a small kitchen fire in, Milwaukee, where you've got the fire department a mile away and they can be there and contain it to the kitchen. If you're out on the back roads or you're up north, it might be a little bit longer, and that loss is going to be much, much more devastating, unfortunately.
Right.
So the risk is higher. So those are definitely factors that will increase your home insurance premium.
That does make sense. And probably not things people necessarily think about when they're looking at their home, but I can see where things that you would want to consider too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it should never be your home insurance premium should never be the full determination of finding your dream house and realizing
what kind of insurance can I get?
Running to the local fire department. Do you get paid by the hour or are you volunteer? Those should not be considerations. If you love the home, buy the home. But, definitely something to
that
keep
there's
in
things.
mind when you realize that you have a much higher home premium than you necessarily wanted to.
Now, we talked about dwelling, but I know people are always curious, like, what about my possessions in the house?
Yes.
How does that work?
Yes. So we'll kind of do almost like a house shape. At the top, you have your dwelling coverage, right? And then the next one down, I would say, is your liability protection. So just in case, just to be clear, if someone is injured on your property, the example I always give is 2 weeks ago when it was really snowy and then it became really icy, you forget to salt your driveway.
Yeah.
And the poor little Amazon driver is up there at 5 in the morning,
they're always out,
ahead
yeah.
of everybody else, and they're trying to drop off your package. They slip and they fall, and they are seriously injured. Your liability coverage is going to pay out their medical payments, if there's any sort of applicable legal fees, and then also if they're out of work for a period of time, your liability coverage will also pay for their
Okay.
lost wages. So that is a very, very important coverage. Next after that, I would say, is your personal property. Personal property it's super easy to increase or decrease, and you really want to think about not only your clothes and your iPad, but also your furniture and your appliances. All of that is going to fall into your personal property. So personal property comes next. Then we have your other structures protection. So
Okay.
in our state, we love our toys. We love our snowmobiles
Yeah.
for the winter. We love our ATVs for the summer. Maybe we have a boat. And you are, because of all of those toys, you've got some storage buildings. You've got some extra garage space that's not attached to your home. That is where your other structures protection comes in. So again, if your agent forgets to ask you about, do you have any sheds on your property? And you're thinking, I just built a 100 by 300 pole building, make sure you tell them about it. That's very, very important. After that, we have your guest medical protection. This one's not a very commonly used coverage, but we do have it on your policy. It's similar to liability coverage in the sense that someone has been injured.
Okay.
Unlike liability coverage, medical payment assumes no fault.
Oh.
It's I like to call it freak accident coverage. Whatever happens, your neighbor comes over and is manning your grill for the summer neighborhood cookout, and they accidentally burn themselves. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
It's not his fault, but he needs to go to the hospital. That would help pay his health insurance deductible.
Okay.
And then from there, you have little coverages that you can opt into that aren't automatically built into your policy. So be sure to talk to your agent about those things. Do you have high-value jewelry? Maybe you have a cat figurine collection that's really, really important to you and is high value. Or you
Right, could be very high value, actually.
Yes,
right?
they are. Yeah. Or in my case, with my fiance at home, musical instruments.
Oh, okay.
Something to think about. Do you have a sump pump in your basement? Again, you're going to want that water backup coverage on there. Just little details that aren't necessarily built into your home policy, but are important to you, and you've got to remember to mention those.
That's where, again, gets back to that conversation, right? Have that conversation.
Take the time.
Yeah. What did that make me? So those, everything but the last piece, the jewelry or that, those are all kind of standard, right?
Yes, yep.
Okay. All right. And what if somebody is going to do a renovation? So they have their home and they're thinking of the kitchen was fine, but they want to make it, chef's kitchen.
Yes.
Should they call you? Or how does that work?
Yes, they definitely should. That goes back to your dwelling coverage amount. If you have put a lot of money and time and effort into revamping that kitchen, you're going to want those extra features covered if something happens. So definitely call us if you do a renovation. Call us if you replace your roof. That will definitely get you a pretty nice discount on your home premium. But yes, renovations.
Oh, really?
Definitely let us know.
You replace the roof, make sure you let her know.
Yes,
Good
yes. Call us the second you have that contract booked, because that will help For sure.
That's good to know.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, those are actually leads into our last questions. Like, what affects your premium? So, a new roof helps.
A new roof helps immensely. There are a lot of things that go into a home insurance premium. So again, is that town class? How far out are you really? That's a big one. Second, your credit score is a small part of it. It's only a soft credit pull, but they are considering that as well. Things like prior loss history, so your claims history. Do you have a history of home claims? That tends to tell your agent that you have issues in the home that you're not necessarily attending to, that are leading to the same issue over and over again. It's gonna make your premium go a little bit out of control. So that's definitely something to think about when you're filing a claim. We always have the conversation. Is it worth it? And everybody has their price point where it doesn't really become worth it anymore. So your home claims, your driving record, it can be a factor. They're thinking if you are out on the road driving 25 miles over the speed limit, you may be just a little bit more of a risky customer. So that's something that they're thinking about as well. And then just the age of the home, I think, is another big one. What are the features of the home that are making it expensive to insure? That's definitely a factor as well.
So now, as we're kind of wrapping up, where area do you work in the whole state of Wisconsin, or like what area do you cover?
I cover the entire state of Wisconsin. I'm licensed in this state. We see people from all over the state. We really do. Yeah. I tend to write a lot of business sort of north and west, and definitely we have a great community base here in Cedarburg as well.
Yeah. And what's the best way to reach out? And we'll include these in the comments. So
you can email me, you can call me directly. I do have a direct line. You can pop into our office. We're right next to Hefner's. We were talking about that before. So yes, if you want to bring me a hamburger and a pineapple shake, you are welcome to then pop into the office, and we can discuss insurance and in our case, how many dogs you have.
Exactly. That's funny. Well, thank you so much. You've been really informative, and I think if anyone has any questions, you can comment it, and we'll make sure that Ruby sees them, and she'll give answers to your questions. But I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't recommend her more. She really takes the time to be an excellent insurance agent. She's great to work with. She's interesting and fun. So give her a call.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
And I'll stop by with a pineapple shake.
Yes, please do. That's my favorite.
It's good to know. Bye.